capital to the Sunshine State.
It's compelling.
The high plains of Kansas and the northeast corner of the land of enchantment.
It's Friday.
The land of EWTN all across the Lone Star State.
It's GRN Alive.
Bringing you faith, fun, and facts.
Live from the studios of the Guadalupe Radio Network.
Join us on the show. Call
877-757-9424.
877-757-9424.
And good morning and welcome to GRN Alive, Friday edition here on the Guadalupe Radio Network. Of course, glad you're with us, and we want you to listen and enjoy and participate in the show today. 877-757-9424 is how you do that. And you also can check us out on Facebook Live, YouTube, Twitter, all these different platforms where you can listen to us or watch us or whatever you want to do. But glad to have you with us. It is February 7th, the Friday of the fourth week in Ordinary Time. And I don't know if you caught this, so last Friday, I said it was the first Friday, and it was actually the 31st, and so I was mistaken.
No, I was just as tired. I didn't notice either.
So this time I'm going to say it is the first Friday,
because
I got home and I was talking to my wife about it being the first Friday, and I was like, no, it isn't.
It's
and not
not,
only that,
yeah.
I said it on the air this morning. And
I just nearly said, and then that means tomorrow is the first Saturday, and that would not have been right. I was going to say go to Mass, and then I realized.
Right. See, we'd be all wrong all over the place, wouldn't we? Okay. And I know none of the listeners noticed last week. I'm sure they just thought anything that comes out of my mouth is just
pure truth.
Unadulterated truth. So also 2.5 weeks before the beginning of Lent. And so my name is Dave Palmer.
Gracious.
Dr. Chris Malloy from the University of Dallas is
Hello.
Good morning, Dr. Malloy. Really appreciate you being part of the show.
It's a lot of fun.
Yeah, theological muscle. That's all those years and years of studying to get your PhD. And not only do you get to teach, but you get to spread your knowledge and wisdom across the radio airwaves.
I tell my wife they're going to have to drag me out of the school when I'm 80,
it's
or whatever.
Fun, isn't it?
There's no point in retiring.
Yeah, all right, amen. I'm sure the UD is happy to hear that as well. Diane Xavier is running all of our social media flawlessly this morning, and Daniel DeMore is our intern, and he is here as well. Every now and then he jumps on air with us, but we're glad
He's
to
waving.
have all these youngsters. Yeah, we don't have a camera on him, but he is waving to you, dear listeners. And also just a gentle reminder that we are less than a month away from the car raffle. Now, that should give you a little sense of urgency, okay? The car raffle is going to be exactly 4 weeks from today. I think on the air live. I can't promise that, but I think it's going to be during this show, and it's March 6th. Somebody that very day, if they're not listening on the air, or even if they are listening, is going to get a call. Imagine this, Dr. Malloy, getting a call from a GM saying, guess what, Dr. Malloy, you just won a 2020 Cadillac CT5.
Not bad.
Yeah, pretty cool.
Especially since yesterday it was really cold.
Yeah.
And I'm trying to get my Toyota door open. It gets jammed. And I'm pulling. I rip the handle off.
Oh my God!
That was theological muscle.
Now you have to enter from the passenger side
Yes.
now? Okay.
That's
all
great.
Right. But hey, nobody said it's going to be easy, right?
No.
Okay. So anyways, buy your tickets, go online, grnonline.com. Better yet, contact your local general manager and say, hey, I want to buy some tickets. I want to sell some tickets. We got less than a month, okay? And we just appreciate the support. This is how we get through the first few months of every year is with this car raffle. And it's wildly successful, and we are so grateful for everybody who participates. All right, Sissel's going to have the news in just a moment, and lots to talk about this week. In fact, we've got a number of stories that, a lot of times the stories that we talk about are a little bit disturbing, but in the midst of all it, there's hope, okay? Because we know that we put our trust not in man, but in Jesus Christ. Sissel's going to tell us a story about this upcoming McCarrick report, former Cardinal McCarrick, that the Vatican is promising is going to be around very soon. And we are in a wounded church. And, of course, it goes way deeper than Theodore McCarrick and the Summer of Shame of 2018, as they call it. That's when it all burst open. And I know many of us lost faith to some degree in leaders and hierarchy. But on the show today, we're going to have a very interesting topic. I was introduced to a gentleman by the name of Toby Gilman. He is now in his upper 50s. But as an 11 and 12-year-old boy living and working serving as an altar server in Buffalo, New York, he was a victim of sexual abuse at the hands of a priest. And it's amazing as you listen to him now how he has recovered with the help of his dear wife Mary, who's also going to join us on air here in the studio. And he has found reconciliation. He has found peace. And the coolest thing about it all is he says, I'm not leaving the church. And, you know, a lot of us have lesser issues with the church. We weren't maybe physically abused, but we got to hang in there. We got to stay tough. And I think the reason I really was attracted to this story is because this is a guy, and by the way, his whole family left the church. His mom, his dad, his 3 brothers. And he's like, nope, I'm not leaving. That's pretty strong.
That's incredible.
They left it because of this.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah, they all left.
Can I say something on the general topic here, because it's important. We have to acknowledge our faults and our sins, and the members of the church are sinners, and every last prelate is a member of the church. Every last prelate is a sinner, and so we do have to admit that. The other thing we have to admit is the scandal of moving priests who have been abusers around. So we have a lot that we need to change. At the same time, the church is holy, and in her actions as church, all she does is teach and sanctify.
Yeah.
So yes, the ministers can do these sins, as private individuals who have a public office, but that's not the church doing that. That's the member.
Yeah.
The other thing is we have to straighten out our facts. It is a fact that priests do not abuse people statistically any more than the typical male. So child abuse is a rampant problem in this country, and there are statistics that continue to show that this is pretty much pervasive. It's mostly males that are abusers. Well, most of the abusers, I should say, are males, but priests don't stand out, and Catholic priests don't stand out among, like, say, Protestant ministers and all that. It's pretty much even across the board.
Yeah, that's good to know. It does stand out in that it seems more egregious when it's a Catholic priest.
Absolutely.
It gets more attention, and I think rightfully so.
Yeah,
because,
we need to own that. We need to own our responsibility, but we also need to straighten the facts out.
Yeah, and thank you for doing that. I appreciate that. And this is a topic, and I know Toby is going to say he's not only reaching out because he wants to transparency, and he wants people who have been hurt through this sexual abuse to come out and come out of the shadows, because he buried it for 20 years. Interestingly, and he'll tell his story. 877-757-9424. And kind of leading into a little bit, you didn't say this directly, but all of us, well, you did say this, all of us are sinners. Okay, so it fits so nicely that at the end of the show today, I'm going to speak to a gentleman by the name of Dan Johnson. He's from Alabama. He started a company called 4 p.m. Media. He works with Father Dave Pavanka, the president of Franciscan University of Steubenville, on a newly released video series called Metanoia, A Journey with Christ into Conversion. And they went out to the Holy Land, and they're talking about personal conversion, because I know I fall into that trap all the time. It's like, bad this person, bad that person. I wish the bishops would do this, do that. We got to work on our own personal conversion.
Yeah.
And so I think it ties in real nicely to our conversation with Toby and Mary Gilman, and all the things that we're going to be talking about.
We can even mention the kicker, the place kicker for the Chiefs.
I didn't know this story.
The place kicker for the Chiefs was at Georgia Tech, and a friend of his said, "Well, why don't you try to go to confession?" Because he was brought up Catholic, and he fell away, and so he goes to confession. And he had an amazing personal conversion experience in the sacrament.
Is that
now
right?
We know that doesn't, that kind of personal, really emotional experience doesn't happen every time you go to confession. But it's such a beautiful sacrament, and now he's a really devout Catholic, and he tries to engage his players, his co-players with it.
Did he kick some field goals in the Super Bowl last weekend? Or
yes,
I know he had.
Yes.
He's a place kicker. He
the
kicked
first
off.
half.
He did. Okay.
The first half.
All
Yeah.
right, that's awesome. That's like one of our sponsors in Guadalupe Radio Network is
Extra points,
Maury
too.
Buford was the punter of the '85
Yes.
Chicago Bears,
Awesome.
and I've interviewed him before, and he tells me about even back then in his 20s when he's playing in the Super Bowl, and he'd always say a little prayer, Jesus, Joseph, Mary, because when you got 300-pound guys running towards you, that
I would be saying that every time. Like, oh my God.
and that's never happened to me. I've never had a whole group of 300-pound men trying to destroy me. All right, so that's the show today. today. We thank you for listening and participating. And again, the phone number 877-757-9424. We'll have some more stories before Toby and Mary come in at about quarter to 15 after, and then of course Dan Johnson at the end of the hour. So that's what we're doing today. And now we'll go to Sissel with a look at news. Good morning, Sissel.
Good morning, GRN listeners. Following the Senate voting to acquit President Donald Trump of his 2 impeachment counts on Wednesday, the president attended a national prayer breakfast and used the platform to chastise his political opponents, boast strong economic numbers, and ask for votes for the future election. At the beginning of his remarks, President Trump spoke of the terrible ordeal he had been through, caused, he said, by some very dishonest and corrupt people. The 68th annual National Prayer Breakfast was held at the Hilton International Ballroom in Washington, D.C. on Thursday. The Vatican has just announced that Pope Francis's apostolic exhortation on the Amazon region will be published on Wednesday, February 12th. The document, which follows October's Synod of Bishops on the Amazon, is highly anticipated for how the Pope will respond to the recommendation to allow the ordination of married men to the priesthood for the ministry in the region. The Synod's final document had also called for women to be considered for the diaconal ordination and contained strong appeals on environmental issues and the rights of indigenous people, which Francis's letter is also expected to address. Meanwhile, Catholics around the world have been waiting for the highly anticipated report on the former Cardinal Theodore McCarrick. The Vatican announced that it would conduct an internal review of files on McCarrick's career in October 2018. McCarrick was a cardinal and archbishop of 2 major American sees before he was found guilty of serial sexual abuse and laicized in 2019 following a canonical process. Since the review was announced, American Catholics, including many bishops, have reportedly called for the release of its finding. It is reported that Pope Francis will announce its release date soon. With the news, this is Sissel Anderson.
All right, thanks, Sissel, and thank you for that. And thanks, everybody, for joining us again. This is GRN Alive Friday edition. Dave Palmer, Dr. Chris Malloy, Sissel Anderson, Diane Xavier, Daniel D'Amore, and all of our guests who are going to be here as well. 877-757-9424 is our phone number if you want to jump in and talk about this, any of the topics that we're talking about today. Before we bring Toby and Mary into studio with us, just a few things, because we like to get you up to date on some of the news. And the other day, I did an interview with our local bishop who's traveling to England for a pilgrimage focused on St. Thomas More. Talking about St. Thomas More and Bishop John Fisher at the time, who, one like the only bishop in England at the time, or one of the only ones that stood up for the deposit of faith. And not that he's the only one, but it reminds me of Bishop Joseph Strickland of Tyler. This guy, I just admire him. In fact, last weekend he was in town for a Catholic Foundation event, and he was there. And I told my wife, I said, I gotta go shake his hand. I just want to say thank you.
Yeah.
Sometimes they just gotta hear it. Didn't get a chance to visit with him, but he was back on Twitter, and the story that he was responding to was a Bishop Franz Joseph Hermann Bode, B-O-D-E, of Germany, Vice President of the German Bishops' Conference, head of the Synodal Path Forum on Women, and Deputy President of German Bishops' Conference. And so this is a pretty high-level prelate, right? He said this week that Christ, quote, became a human being and not a man. Okay, to which Bishop Strickland wrote, Bishop Bode, I hope I'm pronouncing that right, I respectfully call you as one bishop to another to return to the deposit of faith for your salvation and for the good of the church. Your statement that Christ became a human being and not a man is ridiculous and heretical.
Fantastic.
You don't hear that word heretical being bandied about very much, but I think
perhaps it should be.
When it's appropriate, it needs to be.
Yes.
Pretty crazy.
Certainly in this case, male and female, he created him.
Yeah.
Right? So we are either male or female.
And Christ was circumcised. And you don't circumcise females.
That's right.
Right?
And in persona Christi. So this bishop is certainly going after, his ultimate goal here is to go after the all-male priesthood. Mm-hmm. What's interesting about those who go after the all-male priesthood is they're actually going after the priesthood itself in the long run.
Yeah.
They don't believe in the priesthood.
Yeah.
Many of them. I'm not saying that about this particular person, but if you look at the women's ordination movement, they typically don't even believe in the priesthood.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So sometimes you got to go a layer or two, peel the onion back a layer or two to see what they're really getting at, right? Yeah. As Sissel announced, Wednesday is going to be the day. Next week, Querida Amazonia, which means Dear Amazonia, the Pope's post-apostolic exhortation on the Special Assembly of the Synod of Bishops of the Pan-Amazonia region. Well, I'll say that 10 times. is going to be presented 1 o'clock press conference at the Holy See Press Office. Any predictions? You following this closely,
Yeah,
or
no.
you think we're going to be shocked, or is it going to be like, oh, that wasn't as bad as we thought?
Well, I don't know about. I don't think we're going to be shocked, but I think that it might be difficult. So I mean, shocked because we've been prepared. People have been prepared, but because of the synod itself. So my guess is it'll fall in lines with what people are expecting.
And how much weight does something like this have? It's issued by the Pope, so this is a pretty weighty document. But it's not like an encyclical. It's not ex cathedra. So
It's difficult with regard to magisterial statements these days. Basically, as Cardinal Burke says, and I think he's correct, that you have to read them carefully, and some things in them are put forth opinionatively, as in like this is my suggestion, and other things are put forth authoritatively. And so it does require a delicacy of interpretation. And of course, above all, one has to read them in light of the deposit of faith. So in other words, we have the deposit of faith. We can never go against it, no matter what we hear written or said. As St. Paul said in Galatians, if you hear me say, or a letter rumored from me to say something against what I already have preached, let him be anathema. Yeah. Let me, or right? So that's what St. Paul says. So we know what we have to hold by faith from the deposit. And that's why it's good to have the catechism, things like that.
Amen. Speaking of, especially since you work in higher education at a great Catholic university, University of Dallas, one other story I wanted to talk about and maybe get your thoughts on as well. You know, I mentioned Bishop John Fisher, Thomas More. It's neat in a way historically that one was a layman, one of them was a guy with a wife and kids, a statesman, of course. And then one was a clergyman, because I think we're all called to vigorously defend the deposit of faith, as Bishop Strickland has said. This story, I just want to get your thoughts on it. At a meeting in the nation's capital, Father James Martin, of course the Jesuit priest, the most prominent clergyman arguing for the normalization of homosexuality and transgenderism within the church, addressed 150 Catholic college and university presidents, urging them to promote inclusion on their campuses by promoting, quote, LGBT-affirming liturgies, permitting students to choose their own pronouns, and holding, quote, lavender graduations. Okay?
Very troubling.
Martin offered his remarks at the annual meeting of the Association of Catholic Colleges and Universities, the ACCU, where school presidents were joined by nearly 200 top staff for a 3-day conference at D.C.'s Ritz-Carlton Hotel. ACCU President Father Dennis Holtschneider said the group, quote, welcomed Martin very warmly, end quote. These are Catholic university presidents. And I know not all the Catholic universities. I'd like to think.
Certainly not all.
Yeah.
There are many great Catholic universities out there. But no, this is troubling. And the reason why is we sin in weakness. You know, each of us, as we said, is a sinner. But when we define sin as good, we have called evil good. And that's what essentially everyone can see Father Martin is up to. And so the thing is, homosexuality is a disorder. It's a tendency towards an act that is intrinsically evil. And as such, then, that's a disorder. It's not something that we should celebrate. And we need to help and counsel people to act in chastity. And that's the universal law of God, right? And so if we try to rewrite that law, we're confusing people and sending them on a way towards misery. Because as John Paul II says in Veritatis Splendor, the moral code is the path to happiness. If you change that moral code, you're sending people to misery.
Yeah.
Joseph Sciambra, who escaped from that lifestyle, he'll be the first to vouch for that.
Yeah.
He escaped from that misery.
Important voice out there as well.
Yeah.
Yeah, great thoughts. All right, it's 17 minutes after the hour now. We're going to take a 2-minute break, and when we come back, Tony and Mary Gilman are going to join us, and really an incredible couple. I mentioned about them a while back. Back in the early 70s, Tony was a victim of sexual abuse at the hands of a priest at his parish back in Buffalo. And, of course, Buffalo, they just closed down the seminary there. That diocese is a real mess right now. And but Tony and Mary have found reconciliation. They found peace. They found forgiveness, and they're not leaving the church. And they're a very inspiring couple. And they're also going to talk about how they have organized some meetings at their parish in Arlington, Texas, where people are coming forward. They're trying to find a solution to try to dig us out of the mire that we're in as a church right now. So important voices in the church, and they're going to join us in just a moment here on GRN Alive. Quick break. Phone number again, 877-757-9424. We'll be back.
Hi, this is Len Oswald, president of the Guadalupe Radio Network. Did you know that there are 8 different ways that you can enjoy your GRN programming? First, on your local GRN station. Second, streaming on the grnonline.com website. Number 3, on the Guadalupe Radio Network app using your smartphone. Number 4, through podcasts of GRN Alive and other local GRN shows. Just search for Guadalupe Radio Network on your favorite podcast app or listen through the GRN app. Fifth, watch the live video feeds of GRN shows on the Facebook page at facebook.com/GRN Online. Number 6, on Amazon Echo, just say Alexa play and then say the call letters of your local GRN station. Number 7, you can also ask a Google device to stream your local GRN station. And finally, 8, you can also use TuneIn on your computer or smartphone to stream your local GRN station. We are your Catholic radio station. Radio for your soul.
Ladies and gentlemen, this is your captain speaking. We're currently cruising at 39,000 feet. We'll turn that seatbelt sign off for you and let you move about the cabin. Looks like we're about 2 hours and 10 minutes from landing. Plenty of time for you to pray a chaplet.
Wouldn't it be great if everyone prayed the Chaplet of Divine Mercy daily? Why not start today? A friendly suggestion from Guadalupe Radio Network.
I'll bet you know by now that Amazon Smile is a great way to support your favorite charity. And supporting the Guadalupe Radio Network while you shop is easy. Step 1. Just start off at smile.amazon.com. Step 2. Choose La Promesa Foundation as your charity. La Promesa Foundation is the parent company of Guadalupe Radio Network. And Step 3. Enjoy your shopping. Amazon will donate a portion of your purchase to the La Promesa Foundation, and it doesn't cost you any extra. La Promesa Foundation and Guadalupe Radio Network, thank you.
All right, we are back, and this is GRN Live Friday edition, 877-757-9424, 877-757-9424. Dave Palmer, Dr. Chris Malloy, Cecil Anderson, and I want to thank my dear friend Suzette Chaitis. She and I used to do a radio show together a long time ago, and she's the one that introduced me to our next guests, at least tell me about their story, and I thought, yeah, this is an important story. This is something we really need to talk about. So Suzette is here offering prayer and moral support in the studio, so we appreciate her very much. As I mentioned, Toby and Mary Gilman, parishioners at Most Blessed Sacrament Parish in Arlington, Texas, and with the permission of their pastor and also the Fort Worth Diocese, they are helping to organize regular meetings at their parish to deal with the issue of sexual abuse and reconciliation and healing. Toby himself was a victim of priestly sexual abuse as an altar boy back in Buffalo, New York, in that diocese when he was 11 and 12 years old. So that was the early 70s, and he's now 59. He's found peace and wants others to come to grips with their own abuse. And, we all are disappointed and disillusioned to some degree, but not everybody has the experience that Toby has. And as it's going to come out in this conversation, Mary Gilman, who is his dear wife of many years, played a big part in his healing process. And so welcome to both of you. And thank you so much for having the courage to tell your story and be in the face of this issue.
Thank you for having us.
All right, Mary, thank you again for being there as well.
Absolutely. Thank you.
And all right, so again, I promise people we'll keep this, PG. We don't need to go into a lot of details, but this is something that happened when you were somebody that was in a position of trust, a priest in the Diocese of Buffalo.
Yes.
You're 11, 12 years old. That this happened. Anything, of course, not a lot of the details, but you want to say about what was going on back in the early 70s with you, Toby?
Yeah, the priest who was my abuser actually came as assistant pastor to our diocese straight out of Christ the King Seminary. And it was my very first time serving as an altar boy. And like a lot of these priests who ended up victimizing, young children. He was very charismatic. Ended up becoming a great friend of my family. My parents gave him financial support. The whole community donated all types of materials and labor to build him a free home. We called it the Cabin on the Hill, and it was so massive they'd host retreats with nuns and religious and just retreats for men, for women, or what have you. But when it wasn't otherwise in use, that cabin was a place where this priest would invite sometimes dozens of altar boys there. And that's where the abuse occurred. And I was one of the unfortunate ones he kind of focused in on. And the abuse I suffered was probably as heinous as anyone, any story you've read in the news of a serial abuser, which this priest over the years we pretty much determined was from dozens to maybe even 100 or more abuse victims. And I'll switch from victim now because I see myself as a survivor.
Yeah.
But I buried those memories for 20 years just completely repressed them. I couldn't deal with the whole mix of psychological, spiritual, emotional damage. And when Mary and I got married, a few years after having our first child, this priest came down, still a friend of the family, came down to baptize our daughter, and shared at that time he'd been on sabbatical and come to find that he had some issues, that he was looking for validation from families he'd known for years. So after he baptized our daughter, he told us about this sabbatical, and this particular situation was he had come to determine that he was gay. And I'm not saying that that is an issue with me believing that it's all driven by homosexuality. I absolutely do not believe that's the case. But he was looking for validation. So he gets on a plane and he's gotten what he figures is his validation, and all well and good for him, but all these memories started flooding back. And for about a year and a half, Mary knew I was struggling mightily with something.
But she didn't know what it was.
She didn't know what it was, but she, being the very supportive bride that she's been for 35 years, she let me kind of stew in it for a while. And then we had what we call a faith-sharing group. It was 4 couples that met once a month for Bible study or just sharing what was going on in our life, support and pray for one another. And one night, I just could not contain it any longer. And all this started spilling out of me, everything that had happened to me. And it was only at that point, and it was someone else in the room, it wasn't even me, who said, what you're describing is clergy abuse. And from that point forward, it's been a journey and a struggle. There was a period of time that we really considered not attending the Catholic Church. But I came to the determination I couldn't run away from the church. It's where the doctrine is, it's where the Eucharist is. And started fighting my way back to the point that I wrote to the bishop of the Diocese of Buffalo and said, this is what happened to me. And based upon this priest M.O., I believe it's happened to many other young men of my era. And I got not a response from the bishop, but from the lawyers. And I'm sure other survivors out there would recognize this. You go and try and get some sort of reconciliation with the church, and the lawyers pretty much re-abuse me, accuse me as an 11 or 12-year-old boy. Well, maybe you seduced this priest.
Oh, gosh.
But I was persistent enough. I was going to hand out like 5,000 flyers at the current assignment that this priest was at, and I showed it to them. And then I could see the scared look on their face, and the blood kind of drained from their faces, and they realized I was serious and I wasn't going away. But I was successful with the help of an attorney that dealt with a lot of abuse cases in the early 90s. Pursuing some sort of reconciliation for victims, or as I said, I classify myself as a survivor. I had enough proof that they removed this priest from priesthood. And he sold all of his belongings and moved to Alaska, so he couldn't be prosecuted in the state of New York.
Wow, amazing. Toby and Mary Gilman, my guests. If you have a comment, a question, maybe this is a difficult topic for you to hear, call us up if you want. If you have a question or a comment, 877-757-9424. In speaking to Toby on the phone the other day, you told me that probably 5 or 10% of the people that have been through what you've been through are able to get through life without serious problems or addictions or alcoholism or worse. And a lot of it you credit to your wife, Mary, as we mentioned. And Mary, I'd like to get your perspective about this 20-year period of him kind of bottling it up and you not knowing what's going on. And then also when finally that cathartic moment when he's able to kind of release it. Tell us about your journey as wife and supporter of Toby through this.
Sure. So I will tell you, I've told most everybody that we were in a really dark place for quite a while. We had 2 children at that time, and we had a third one that was on the way, and I kept looking at him thinking, we've got to raise our kids in something. If you want to go to a Methodist church, if you want to go to a Lutheran church, I don't care where we go, but God has got to be a part of our family. I know you're struggling. And, you know, the light bulb moment was really when we had that face share group. So I knew what was happening to him. So, you know, I encouraged him to go to therapy. And, you know, he started to take steps to try to heal himself. But it was still very difficult to talk about. And so I went ahead and started going back to the church with my kids, and kind of on a surface level, if you will, not really feeling a big connection with spiritual, you know, the spiritual aspect of everything, but my community. I needed that support. I needed people I could lean on that had the same values I did. And so, I mean, it has taken up till, I would say, we did chirp retreat. Has it been 2 years now?
2.5.
2.5 years. And now that's now called Welcome.
Yeah.
But I had come a long way, but that was a turning point, I think, for Toby.
Very good. I mentioned before that both your parents, all 3 of your brothers, have left the church. In one sense, they must think you're crazy. You're still a member of that Catholic Church, but I find it great. I think it's the power of God's grace working through you and Mary that you're still not only in the church, but actively in the church, organizing meetings at your parish. Tell us about that, the relationship with the family who have all since said, unfortunately, we're done with the Catholic Church.
Yeah, and on occasion, when Mary and I will visit with family, they'll point out something kind of like a gotcha moment. You know what have you read what your Pope has done now and what have you? So they absolutely cannot believe that we're still practicing and devout Catholics. But I reached a point where, and I don't know if they'll ever understand this, that I had to forgive the church. I had to forgive my abuser because I could not live with the bitterness and anger. Raising a family, devoted to my wife, it was very damaging. And the peace that came over me when I was able to forgive in my heart, I've never been able to see the priest face to face, but actual, honest, realistic forgiveness of the church. The church didn't do this to me. A very sick man did, and at this point, I think people are surprised when I can say I'm at peace and I'm not angry. Now, I am committed to, particularly at our church, having a dialogue of other folks. It's not just the victims or the survivors, but their families and everything that need the healing. So that's why we're, based upon Bishop Barron's letter to a suffering church, we now have our Healing Our Church committee, and we're inviting people to come in and share what's on their mind. And it's been very cathartic for our parish. And 10 other victims of sexual abuse, not just clergy, but other types of abuse have come forward. And to me, the Holy Spirit working through that, my story having an impact, that those folks are moving along in their struggle to hopefully get to a place of peace that I've reached. That's Mary's and my mission right now, the mission of our parish.
And I want to talk about those meetings that you're having. Also, the book that was very, very well read and was very healing for many people from Bishop Robert Barron really highlights, Dr. Malloy, what you were saying earlier, is the separation between individual sinfulness, which we all have to varying degrees, and that pure, unadulterated, beautiful teachings of the Catholic Church. And the Church is a mystical bride of Christ who is all pure. And we really have to keep that front of mind, right?
Which we so need. And so it just, you can see just like at the highest level, kind of like, how could the devil take down the church better than getting her own ministers to abuse people, and then we leave the food that we need. I mean, it's just like in a family. I mean, you need your parents, and if they are doing something to you, then you don't have parents. I mean,
Right.
it's just so
Right.
sad.
Well, and Bishop Barham said it's the devil's masterpiece.
That's well said.
So tell us at the parish level, Most Blessed Sacrament Parish in Arlington, and I love the fact, when you and I were talking about this, I said, hey, we're going to have you up on Facebook Live. You're going to be, and you were like, okay. I mean, you've given testimonies at retreats, and you don't mind being the face or the wife of the face of the victim, and I really, really appreciate that so much because I think you're going to help so many people come out of the shadows like you were in for 20 years. How did this come about at the parish? Did you approach the pastor and say, I want to have these meetings? And what exactly are y'all doing?
We had a formation group that really came out of our chirp retreats, welcome retreats, where more and more men and women were making probably a tighter connection they've ever made before. I mean, some people I know now intimately that for 20 years I saw them in the pew and, peace of Christ and all of that, and hold their hand, when we said the Lord's Prayer. But this chirp has just enlivened our community. So we said, what can we do to continue to capitalize on this energy? So our formation committee in discussion said, well, this Bishop Barron book is good because so many people are reeling from the scandal, because it seems like every 5 to 10 years we get a whole new wave of information. And so it was suggested, let's get hundreds of these books. And we did. We handed out, 800 to 900 to our parish, and we said we're going to have a discussion. And the first discussion group, we offered 2 nights during the week on a Wednesday and a Friday. And in those that following week, after I stood up at the altar after every Mass and announced this and said, hey, I'm going to be giving my testimony. I'm a survivor and not a victim. And I very much support and fight for my church. 200 people showed up.
Wow.
And it was almost overwhelming. And I told everyone, all your feelings are valid, all your questions are valid, or what have you. And we had quite a robust discussion, anger and tears and things like that. But out of that came the desire to, let's take all of our energy. And then we had a brainstorming session, and now we have 4 committees that are pursuing something hopefully on a broader scale. We have a declaration committee that came up with sort of our vision and mission for helping people come forward and heal and comfort them. We have what we're calling right now a grievance committee, which is every quarter we're doing the same. Let's have this open town hall forum and have people get their feelings out.
Mm-hmm.
That's something in my years of dealing with my abuse, I'd always hoped and prayed the church would say, come on in, Toby, we know, you've suffered this, let's talk about it. And I never got that conversation. So I feel glad that we can offer that to all the people, with all their feelings and confusion and disgust.
Yeah.
And then we have a accountability committee. We want to have a voice as lay people in particularly the newest topic, the cover-up, to deal with that, and can the lay voice be heard. And then we also have a community outreach. So we're trying to outreach not just to our church community, but the broader community and hopefully other parishes that are struggling with this, to help other victims come forward and voice their feelings and their anger or whatever, and help them heal. We've had counselors at the first town hall session and offering people resources to certainly we don't have the background, Mary and I, to do that, but we're working with counselors to help the victims that come forward.
Yes. 877-757-9424 is the phone number. We only have a few more minutes with Toby and Mary Gilman, and I want to get some more from Mary here as a very, very important part of the healing process for her husband, Toby. And maybe this strikes a chord with you, dear listener. Maybe you have a question for him. You better hurry. Get on the line if you do have a question. The phone number again, 877-757-9424. Or you can just sit back and listen. Mary, I want to get any other thoughts. I want you to ask a direct question, but anything else you want to mention?
Absolutely. There is really a couple of thoughts I'd like to leave with all of your listeners. And I have to tell you, I'm a huge fan of Guadalupe Radio and your particular program. I listen often, so I hope everybody has 9:10 a.m. on their dial at the top. But,
and on the back of their car.
Yeah, that too.
And, of course, all the other frequencies everywhere else
absolutely.
as well. But
So we're hoping,
thank you.
we do have friends listening down in Houston and Austin and some other areas this morning. So, but what I'd like to say, out of those grievance committees, we had little subgroups where we would discuss, Bishop Barron's videos, because that goes along with the book he has. And there are people that just don't know what to say when they're out in public and someone says, "Why are you still Catholic?" Mm-hmm. And to me, if I go to the very beginning, where Christ had the 12 apostles, well, he had a doubter.
Yeah.
He had a denier. He had a tax collector. And then he had Judas, mm-hmm. who condemned him to death by what he did. And yet the church still stood. And yet he still sat at the Last Supper with all of them and broke bread and loved them from his heart. And to me, that is so important, that people come out. I'm hoping that they feel comfortable, or will start to feel comfortable in sharing their own abuse stories. We're here with a warm heart and warm hands to welcome you. Of course, I'm a hugger, so I'd like to hug people. But also, I'd really like to encourage clergy that when someone comes in the door, even if they're angry, know that it's not you in particular they're angry at, and try to not personalize it, but give them that warm welcome. Give them that reconciling hug that they deserve from the church, that they deserve that apology, they deserve that outreach from you in particular. So, and we want to be doing that at Most Blessed. So, that's just a perspective
very
I want
well
to
said.
offer.
I can see how she's such a blessing to you, Toby, in particular. Toby, we have about a minute remaining before we have to take a break. I want to give you the last word, and thank you, Mary, for being here, and I'm glad you're a supporter and a fan of GRN. People outside of the Fort Worth Diocese or North Texas that are listening right now and maybe say, gosh, I'd like to do something like this. Can they get in touch with you? Is there what should they do at the parish level? We got about a minute.
Absolutely. At our parish, I've offered my email address, my phone number to anyone that wants to talk about this, and sometimes it's just listening. I did with the SNAP network several years ago, counsel people from around the country. They'd say, "Toby, would you talk to this person? They were also abused in the Diocese of Buffalo." So there was one woman I counseled over the phone, every month for about 3 years. But I feel the Holy Spirit moving through me. You talked about me being the face, but it's really the Holy Spirit that has informed me that my story is helpful in healing to people, and that's why I tell it. So any other parishes, we'd like to, link with them as well, Most Blessed Sacrament and others in the diocese to help those parishes as well.
Yeah. I'll tell you what, make it simple. If anybody wants to contact me, I can put them immediately in contact with you. How's that? Dave
Perfect.
Palmer at grnonline.com. Dave Palmer at grnonline.com. I've got Toby's email address and phone number, and he's right here in front of me. And so I'll be able to communicate that information and get you guys in touch. Thank you so much to both of you. Thank you, Suzette, for suggesting this. She said it might be kind of a controversial topic, but it's an important topic.
Yes,
so
absolutely.
God bless you. I ask all our listeners to pray for you and for all the victims of sexual abuse, and also for the priests and the whole church. We need healing.
Thank you so much.
So thank you.
Absolutely.
God bless you.
Appreciate you.
And now we're going to talk about metanoia when we come back. Dave Johnson is with 4 p.m. Media and doing a video series with Father Dave Pavonka about metanoia, personal conversion. Fits in really nicely with this topic. We'll have that right after this.
Did you know that there are several ways for you to stay connected to the Guadalupe Radio Network? Visit our website at grnonline.com or hang out with us at facebook.com/grnonline. You can even tweet us. Just search for @GRNOnline. And don't forget, you can connect to our email list with your smartphone. Just text the letters GRN to the number 42828. Get connected and be blessed.
Coming to a GRN station near you, it's the raffle ticket drawing for the 2020 Cadillac CT5 Luxury. Picture yourself driving off in this beauty while listening and supporting Catholic radio on the GRN. And it can be all yours by purchasing a ticket for $25 each or 5 for $100 by calling 888-784-3476 or simply go to grnonline.com. That's grnonline.com. Drawing will be held Friday, March 6th, so don't delay.
I had a personal experience that was life-changing for me. My husband of 21 years decided to leave our family, me and my girls, and in the midst of the absolute horrible heartache, I happened to be flipping through the radio one day on the AM channel because I didn't feel like listening to music, and I happened to find Catholic radio. And ever since then, I have been tuned in religiously, and I feel like I have a really, really strong pull to the Catholic faith.
The Guadalupe Radio Network would like to thank those listeners who have supported Catholic Radio financially over the years so that we could be there when Terry needed us. If you would like to support your Catholic radio station, please visit grnonline.com and you can click on the Donate Now button. Again, we sincerely thank you for helping us to be there for Terry and everyone else that needs God's love.
And we're back. This is GRN Alive Friday edition, 877-757-9424, 877-757-9424. Thanks for joining us. We have precious little time, but a very, very important topic. You know, my family and I subscribe to Formed, which is a video service, and about a year ago or so, we started watching this Wild Goose series that we all really enjoyed with Father Dave Pavanka, and he was on our program not too long ago, and it recently came to my attention that there is a new series that Father Dave Pavanka is hosting called Metanoia, A Journey with Christ into Conversion with Father Dave Pavanka. And, of course, he's with the Wild Goose. And Father Pavanka guides you through the Holy Land into a more profound understanding of Jesus' deep and abiding love and his call to conversion. And he's working with 4 p.m. Media out of Alabama. And their creative director, I think that's the title, is Dan Johnson, one of the founders as well. And he joins us to talk about this series that is free and available online. Just came out this week, in fact. Dan Johnson, good morning. Thanks for being on the show today.
Good morning. Thank you for having me.
All right. Creative director of 4 p.m. Media. I visited your website, and boy, you guys are right there in Alabama, where EWTN is located, and looks like you're doing. How did you connect with Father Pavanka and Franciscan University to work on not only this series, but other ones as well, right?
Sure. Yes. So the Wild Goose was the first, and then Metanoia, and then several little projects, and then a feature documentary actually on St. Francis that released a little over a year ago. And we met Father Dave. My wife and I both went to Franciscan when he was first stationed there. And then our families have become close since then. So once we started getting into video production, 4 p.m. Media started. It just seems like a good fit to start working with him because his delivery of his messages, the way that he speaks to the heart is just so great. And so we wanted to be able to put that out there for more people to see and experience.
And this new one, Metanoia, a 10-part documentary series from the Ministry of the Wild Goose and 4 p.m. Media, released this week, and it's free of charge. And first of all, you know, Metanoia itself, why did you all find that particular theme to be important for this series?
Sure. Conversion is a big part of the Franciscan Third Order Regular, and particularly Father Dave's province. And so that was something that was certainly percolating in his own mind, Father Dave, as we were thinking about the next series. And then as we all kind of came together and prayed, I think it's a great time to reflect and to bring about conversion. Metanoia itself, the word, to change, to turn, to repent, to convert. There's also sort of an intrigue and a mystery to the word, which is very similar to the Wild Goose and the term that we used for the last series. So we felt like it had that intrigue, but it also has that depth, that it's an important time for us to, with all the things that are going on in the church and going on around us in our own lives, conversion and growing closer to Christ, and that is incredibly important, timely.
I got a couple websites direct to people, and they both have the term Wild Goose, and so I got to ask you, what's up with this Wild Goose? And but it's wildgoose.tv is where you can access Metanoia. I believe that's the case, right, Dan?
Yes.
And
yes,
there's also
is.
the wildgoosesloose.com. It sounds like a Dr. Seuss rhyme or something. So what's going on with this Wild Goose? What's that all about?
Sure. The term was first introduced to Father Dave years ago on a pilgrimage. A woman who was on the pilgrimage mentioned this Celtic term. I believe it was Saint Columba who first coined the phrase, the wild goose. And so the Celts had this idea that the spirit is we try to control the spirit, and sometimes the spirit appears as a gentle dove and a flame. But there's a movement of the spirit that is powerful and that moves us in ways that are uncontrollable sometimes. And so there's a sense of this wildness that we felt like was an important theme to bring to the Holy Spirit with the first series, and in a sense sort of become the symbol of everything that we do with the ministry.
Mm-hmm. I told you my family sat around and watched some of the first series, and we got young girls, teenage girl, my wife and I, middle age, and we all just really enjoyed it. So I do invite people to check this out. I think you'll enjoy the quality of the production, and also the message is just is really, really good. Of course, I haven't seen this new series yet. It just came out this week, but I'm sure it's outstanding. Wildgoose.tv is where you can sign up for free access to Metanoia, The Wild Goose, and others as well. But this one in particular is called Metanoia, A Journey with Christ into Conversion with Father Dave Pavanka. Dan Johnson from 4PM Media is joining me. Their website, 4pmmedia.com. And Dan, this one is filmed on location in the Holy Land, leading viewers on an inspirational journey of grace, hope, repentance, transformation. Obviously, going out to the Holy Land is an awesome thing to do, but why did you find it was important to do it on location there?
We found this with the Wild Goose, but when we're doing productions like this, being able to transport people to a place that represents the themes and the ideas that are found in the film itself, in each of the episodes of the series, is incredibly important for the viewers. It transports them in a way where they can meditate more deeply on what we're talking about. To be in the desert near the Mount of Temptation when we're talking about Jesus' power over the evil one transports you there. Being on the Sea of Galilee and hearing the story of Peter jumping out of the boat and swimming to shore, filming on the shore where Jesus and Peter would have eaten the fishes, and he asked the question, "Do you love me?" I mean, to see that, to sort of visibly be able to pull that in, and then the idea that not everybody has the opportunity to go on pilgrimage to the Holy Land. So to be able to bring some of that imagery to a greater audience, to be able to experience it in this way, we felt like was an important part of it, and certainly adds to the production value and the beauty of the piece itself.
Dan Johnson with 4PM Media is my guest. Phone number, if you have a question or comment, do so quickly, though. We're down to our last 5 minutes or so of the program and the interview. 877-757-9424, 877-757-9424. And I see, Dan, in the write-up about it, that in these various episodes of Metanoia, Father Pavanka speaks to a Jewish convert, a biblical scholar, an Eastern Rite sister, others. And so is this based on, like, each episode is on a person, or is it kind of sprinkled with a lot of different testimonies? Or what's the format?
Sure. So the format, each episode has a message. So for episode 1, which released on Monday, Who Do You Say That I Am?, Father Dave gives a teaching on that question where Jesus takes him to Caesarea Philippi and asks the disciples, "Who do the people say that I am?" And then, "Who do you say that I am?" So each episode has him giving a teaching. And then we sprinkle through that interviews with various people speaking about how some of these questions and these themes have impacted them in their own lives, their own experiences, sort of brings home and makes real and present some of those scriptural ideas and some of those loftier theological ideas and teachings, makes it very real and present through seeing it with these interviews. They're just sprinkled throughout.
Yeah, and I love also that it says that this is really about Jesus. It's Christocentric. You know, I mean, a lot of times, I'm guilty of it. We talk about things. We talk about the problems in the church. We talk about this and that issue, but really, ultimately, we're called to a relationship with Jesus Christ. And I'm guessing that in this Metanoia series, this comes out loud and clear about that personal relationship that we're all called to.
Absolutely. So if the first series that we did, The Wild Goose, centered on the Holy Spirit, this series centers absolutely on a relationship with Jesus and how we encounter him, how he moves us to conversion, how he loves us. So one of the episodes, Sin and Mercy, talks about how and sin is important because it was important to Jesus to reflect on how that relationship needs to be repaired, but then also his love and mercy. So it's this great back and forth. One of the episodes is this teaching is hard. Excuse me. It's not always easy, but he's always calling us into that relationship, that these tough questions and tough things, suffering that we experience, he's been there with us through all of that. So to kind of place ourselves in that situation and then hear Jesus asking that question, do you love me? After all of this, that's the last episode, as do you love me? And so this journey with Christ into conversion is really present throughout the whole series.
Very nice. Down to our last few minutes here, Dan Johnson from 4 p.m. Media, working with Father Dave Pavanka on this series called Metanoia, A Journey with Christ into Conversion. And, it's been kind of the theme of this entire show. We talked about the sexual abuse, clergy sexual abuse, and we all are called to this conversion. And, Dan, I know you're an expert in film and videography and all that. And as you do this, did you have a particular audience in mind? Is it one size fits all? Is it, we got, young people here in studio with us in their 20s, and of course people are in their 70s. Who is this for? Mostly Catholic audience or everybody, or who did you have in mind for this?
Sure, I would say it is mostly a Catholic audience, although we because of Father Dave's delivery and the way that it comes across, we found that Protestants alike can very much relate to this. And then in terms of age, it's one size fits all. I'm a firm believer that beauty translates to all demographics. And by virtue of the quality of the production and the quality of the message, that it's not too lofty for a younger audience to understand and to be able to reverberate in their hearts as well. So we really have seen that with the Wild Goose and have modeled it after that as well.
You mentioned the first one was rolled out this week, and so I guess it's kind of a drip approach where you don't get them all at the same time each week. So tell us, for those who are listening, and I think it's awesome that this is free of charge. You sign up for access to Metanoia, wildgoose.tv. So what should people do? And we got about 45 seconds, so talk quickly.
Sure, talk quick. Okay, so there's 10 episodes. The first one released this week. The last one will release the Monday of Holy Week. They're free online at wildgoose.tv. Just sign up, as you said. And then there's a study guide that goes along with that. So you can download those from wildgoose.tv as well for each of the episodes. And you can watch it with your family. You can watch it in your dorm room. You can watch it with a group of students. You can watch it with a group at your parish. We've seen a lot of people be able to take this and do whatever works for them, which is a beautiful thing.
All right. Dan, thanks so much. Again, also want to direct people to the 4 p.m. Media website, 4pmmedia.com. Dan, thanks for joining us this morning. I hope thousands of people joined us. And Sissel, you had something?
Oh, yeah. We just had a call.
Thank you. I appreciate it.
Dan, we just had a caller ask how to get the study guide that goes along with this.
Sure. So there's a download available on wildgoose.tv for that specific episode. There's a tab that says resources.
Awesome. Thank you.
Dan, thanks so much. Thanks to all of our guests. Thanks to Daniel and Sissel and Diane, Dr. Chris Malloy, and all of our guests. And have a great, wonderful weekend. God bless you. Thanks for listening.
Thank you for listening to GRN Alive.
From the studios of the Guadalupe Radio Network.
For more faith, fun, and facts,
join our email list.
Just text the letters GRN to the number 42828. That's GRN to the number 42828.
And may your Friday be filled with the joy of the Lord.
Probably ever had. Yeah. Okay. All right, Sissel. So if you just want to really pound this one, because it's only going to run for a few days, but it's about our the live remote on Tuesday, and so whenever you're ready, and then you've got the script for